So here we go. So yeah, thank you both for joining me today. It's really great to have you here to mark the release of my new single, Staying for Love. And so this song talks about being in an abusive relationship and explores the meaning of true love. And it's not from personal experience, but it's from speaking to people who've sadly experienced domestic abuse, and also as a Christian looking into what is the meaning of true love and looking at that passage in the Bible from 1 Corinthians. And then piecing it all together into this song. So we've got Jodi here, who has been a friend for many years and has also had experience working with victims of domestic abuse. And we have Rosemary here from Press Red. And the first time I heard you guys was when I was over at the Message Trust, because as an Eden team here in Liverpool, we go over to the Message, and I was really inspired to hear about what Press Red do. So it'll be great to hear a little bit more today. So first, Jodi, let's come to you. And if you just want to tell us a little bit about yourself and a bit about your experience.
Yeah. So I studied psychology and counselling at university, and then straight after that moved on into a support worker, outreach worker role within a domestic abuse support charity. So I'd always wanted to get into support work in some way, but domestic abuse particularly, I think, was an interest of mine, and something I felt I wanted to develop a kind of knowledge of as well. Yeah. So that's when I went into that, and I worked there for just under 4 years, and then I moved on to different roles within more generic support, really, for homelessness support, family support, and then also refugee support as well. So, but within that, the kind of common theme really for me was domestic abuse, and is domestic abuse, in that it's just so prevalent in any area that I've worked, regardless of age or ethnicity, whatever it might be, area that I've worked in, it's always been prevalent.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. That's great. Thanks, Jodi. And Rosemary, do you want to tell us a little bit about you and Press Red?
Yes, my name is Rosemary Hack, and I'm actually very new to Press Red. I've only been leading it for a couple of months. I think it's 3 months now, because it was just as lockdown started. So it's been a very interesting introduction. Prior to that, I've actually been living overseas the last 40 years, doing various things, and most recently leading an organization responding to HIV and AIDS. And I think during my journey in leadership and as a woman and working in Christian organizations, I've become passionate about somehow disrupting the situations that allow discrimination, that allow abuse, and allow these things to happen. So Press Red seemed like a natural fit, because, Press Red is primarily around breaking the silence around all forms of abuse against women. So domestic violence, trafficking, child marriage, rape as a victim of war, female genital mutilation, and so on and so forth. We are not so involved at the coalface. We haven't got shelters that we run and things like that. But we're involved in training. We're involved in raising awareness. We're involved in prevention. Trying to empower people who are working with people who are at the coalface, so to speak. So that's us. Lockdown has been a challenge because a lot of our face-to-face stuff has stopped. So we've got a good website with good resources online. We're developing a bigger resource bank with more and more information that people can get online as well.
Yeah. Oh, it's fantastic. It's fantastic what you guys do. I found it interesting because I wrote this song at the end of last year, and now we found ourselves in lockdown, and this seems to be, obviously, for obvious reasons, a more relevant topic, because I imagine things are a lot more difficult for people in this situation. Jodi, what do you think? How do you think lockdown might have affected some of these situations that people find themselves in?
Yeah, I think it's interesting you say about it. It sort of feels, sorry, I can't remember your exact wording, but you feel it's more relevant. Yeah, and I think it's an interesting one, because I think it has come to the surface, particularly in the media. But actually, I think what it's doing is it's just giving us a window into the reality of what was already going on. You may well know the stats, but I was looking up some stats particularly around lockdown. And obviously the general statistic, very sadly, is that every 3 days a woman is killed by a man in the UK. So the prediction almost for the first 3 weeks of lockdown would be that 7 women are killed. In reality, it was actually 14 women and 2 children that were killed during those first 3 weeks. So it's doubled almost. The risk has increased dramatically. And I know, just speaking to my colleague and good friend who runs the domestic abuse charity, their referrals in April this year had doubled from April last year. So it's had a huge impact. And I think it's important as well to recognise that the risk has escalated not because of the pressures on abusers or people choosing to abuse, but it's because of the difficulty for survivors or victims to seek help. That's why the risk has really increased.
Okay. And Rose, have you found a similar thing to Jodie? Have you found that more people have maybe contacted Press Red or some of the organisations you work with during lockdown?
Yeah, I would want to just echo what Jodie says. I think it's absolutely spot on. I don't necessarily think that the coronavirus is making people abuse, but it's like a pressure cooker. It creates this perfect environment for abusers to abuse, and a very difficult situation for people who are abused to speak out about it, to get out the house, to find any natural way of escape. I mean, I was looking at some statistics of what about the UK even without coronavirus. And domestic violence accounts for 16% of all violent crime, but it is the violent crime least likely to be reported to the police. It's got more repeat victims than any other crime. And it is the single most quoted reason for becoming homeless. So that's the situation we've got anyway. And then you add this pressure cooker, and of course it's going to all explode. Absolutely. It's a terrible problem. But, you know, maybe in the long run, it's just making us face up to what is already there.
I mean, it's hard to get your head around, isn't it? Like, what would your advice be then? We'll come to, say, Rose first and then to Jodie. What would your advice be for anyone who finds himself in an abusive relationship generally, and maybe in this time particularly?
Well, I think you've got more than two issues. You've got the person that's being abused. Is it an ongoing thing, or is it an absolutely in the moment crisis? Something's happening now, I need to get out. And then you've also got, what happens if I hear my neighbour being abused? Which is also actually a very difficult question. And just to deal with that first, and Jodie, you've got more experience. If you disagree with something I say, feel free to add to what I say. But I would say, do not get involved. Don't go around there and try and break it up. If it's violent, it sounds dangerous, call the police. If you think something is ongoing, you can also call like a domestic abuse hotline and get advice from them. But if it's a crisis in the moment, call the police and get them involved. I mean, if you know the person, you could also phone them or something like that, which might just give a natural break, you know, and help things to cool down a little bit. I'm not sure, but I think you have to have a relationship to do that. And I wouldn't necessarily call them and say, hey, you're being beaten up. It might be better to call and say, hey, I'm going shopping. Can I get something for you? Because you don't make the situation worse. First principle is you want to do no harm. And then for the person who's being abused, again, if your life's in danger, you need to get out. If you can call 999, if you call 999 and you can't speak, you then dial 55 and it puts you straight through to the police. So you don't have to go through the what service do you want and all that stuff. And again, abuse is more than violence. Violence is a part of it, but there's also coercion, there's financial abuse. And all abuse is a form of violence, actually. So call a domestic helpline again. If you go to our website, Press Red, we've got a whole list of numbers that you can call, but the actual National Domestic Abuse Helpline is probably the place to start. But I think Jodie has more experience with that, so she would be able to give more advice.
I agree. The National Domestic Abuse Helpline. But I mean, ideally, in terms of ongoing support, it's your local support services. So if you Google local, even if you just put DA, standing for domestic abuse services, it's really, Google's great at finding your local one. But the good thing about the domestic abuse helpline is it's 24 hours. So that's great, obviously, for the middle of the night or whenever you might need it. But yeah, agree. Obviously, in an emergency, you call 999. And sorry, just to go back to what you're saying about intervening, absolutely agree that particularly couple intervention, absolute no. And I think and just because of the subject of church and faith, I suppose, is that I think what has happened a bit in the past is that people with all goodwill, might want to go and speak to a family together or a couple together to try and resolve it as if it's a relationship issue, when it's absolutely not that, and that will significantly increase risk to the person receiving the abuse, essentially. So just to be really cautious around that. Yeah.
Okay, well that's great advice, because that is one of my questions about, you know, who is it that should make contact? Do you just leave it to the person who has been abused, or if you overhear something, you know, you would advise just calling the police and not going around and trying to sort it out yourself?
Yeah, and also I think as a friend or just a neighbour or whoever, just you can call the National Domestic Abuse Helpline and get some advice.
Okay.
So then, you know, so you're not feeling you're kind of making this huge decision around how to support such a complex situation. So yeah, and often, you know, the people that people turn to their friends and neighbours and family. Well, it tends to be more friends and family, more likely than police. So if that happens, it's kind of not being quick to jump into giving advice on something that you're not sure of, and to seek advice elsewhere first.
Yeah. Okay, that's fantastic. Okay, just before we finish then, was there anything you guys wanted to ask each other, or did you have a question you were going to ask Jodie?
Jodie, could you just clarify what you meant by couples intervention? Are you talking about a couple going around to a couple who are having problems?
No, sorry. I mean, so if someone came to you, it doesn't have to be church. I guess I'm just using that as an example, given that I'm talking to you and you're a faith-based organisation. But it could be that someone comes to you and says, I'm going through this situation, and that person then might respond by saying, okay, let's talk to you both as a couple. So do you see what I mean? So they intervene with the couple rather than supporting the individual who came to them.
I see.
So what advice would you give to church leaders, to pastors and elders, leaders in a church, if somebody comes to them and says they're being abused?
I would say initially, so in that moment, ensure that it's safe to talk to them in that moment. So say it's in you're having a coffee after church and they disclose something to you, and their partner, who they're saying the abuse is about, is around. Perhaps find a time, a bit like you said, oh, well, maybe we could go for a coffee later, or I could get you something from the shop, or, you know, you can find ways of talking to them more privately. But I would, and listen, and just be kind and understanding, and don't jump to, it's the kind of basic support work really, but don't jump to defending, which is actually even though that sounds obvious, especially if you know both people involved, you might say, oh, well, he's been struggling at work recently, hasn't he? Or do you see what I mean? It's quite easy to quickly defend without even realising that you're then silencing that person that's come to you, because then they'll kind of think, oh, yeah, that's what I was thinking. Okay, well, maybe it's okay that you treated me like that this week, or, you know, and it's sort of that cycle that happens, that people don't mean to do that, but that's the reality. But I would say in terms of longer term support, so not in that very moment, seek support if you're not confident on supporting that kind of issue. Seek support from your local domestic abuse service to get advice on how you do that. Because often people won't go to the local service because they're scared of doing that, or, you know, it's a new thing and it's hard to open up to someone you don't know. So that's why they're more likely to talk to a friend in the church, for example. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, lovely. And Jodie, is your question kind of been answered already?
No, actually, let me just find the exact wording so I get it right. I just wondered how you think faith might impact on someone's ability to recognise domestic abuse or to seek help.
That's a very good question.
I know, it's quite a big one.
Yeah, because I think faith is something that helps you get through something.
Yeah.
But I think in issues like this, faith, I don't know whether, I wouldn't say faith is a hindrance, but sometimes our cultural context within Christianity, I think, can be a hindrance.
Yeah.
We think, it doesn't happen in the church. But it does. It happens as much in the church as outside the church.
Yeah.
And that's sort of why I asked you the question about the pastor or church leader. What questions should they ask? Because I've talked to people who the pastor said, well, you need to go back to him. You need to submit. And you go back and you shouldn't have gone back.
Yeah, of course.
Actually ended up leaving the faith because of that. Because leaving their spouse meant leaving the faith. It was equated with with failing.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're a victim of something, it doesn't mean that you failed. And maybe that's a question wider than a faith question, and maybe I'm just rambling on a little bit. But I think faith can also be very helpful in finding solutions, because you've got people who care, you've got people who will pray, who will walk with you, who really want to make it better, who want to help you.
Yes.
And you've got so many fantastic people of faith working with Press Red. Because they're people of faith, because they want to see the kingdom of God in reality, in people's lives, in people's families, in people's communities. Does that answer your question, or was I just rambling?
No, well, I don't think it's a clear answer, is it? Either way, I think it's a big question. I think the example you gave, is one that I imagine in some church, in some forms of faith as well. It's not, I really do not want to be judging any group or anything like that, but I think there can be challenges within it, I imagine, as well. But like you say, community too, and a support network, which a lot of people don't have. So I think the church could be incredible for that. Yeah.
But I do think it's absolutely key that church leaders are educated in this area, because if you don't know about it, you might not see it.
There's that too. Yeah. Yes, and actually any training as well. I know that doesn't help you in the moment of when someone talks to you about this, but any training that church leaders could have, should have it, and not just about just safeguarding. That should be in there too, but specifically about domestic abuse, because it's a hugely complex area. Can
I just recommend that Press Red has just developed a course in conjunction with Redcliffe Bible College around abuse against women. It's a 6-week course. You have to have somebody to lead it. The material's all online. It's not just domestic violence, it's all forms of violence against women. But that's a very practical thing that could be used in a church in small groups, either online or face-to-face when the time comes.
That's fantastic. So basically then, if people, churches or anyone watching wants to find out more or maybe get some training, is that something that they could come to Press Red for? You could either provide it yourselves or point them in the right direction?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, that's great.
Yes.
And then in terms of other organisations, you've mentioned a few that people could phone. So domestic abuse services, they all have local ones, I'm guessing, to where people live. Would they be the best places for people to call?
Yeah, so like I said, if it's in the moment, or it could be 2:00 in the morning, or you've always got that domestic abuse helpline, which is 24/7, and then also consider for more longer term support your local support service. And just to say that something that I really learned through the years of supporting people is that we really were not there to tell you to leave. Or to tell you what to do in any way. The last thing we want to do is control your life when it's already probably being controlled by someone else. So we're here to support you through whatever place you're in. But if you did want to get out very quickly, those support services can help you to do that. Equally, they just might need to listen to you, and you might just need to feel heard and feel that someone cares. That's really important.
Great. Well, unless there's anything else you guys wanted to add, I think It's been really great chatting to you both, and for me personally, really insightful, and I'm sure to anyone that watching, it's been really helpful. And I hope that it might just be the first step for some people, either if they find themselves in that situation, to realise there is an out, or for people who might not know what to do if they overhear it, or how to support people. I think that's been really helpful. So thank you so much. The song Staying for Love is out now, and I hope that when people hear the words as well, I hope that people feel more empowered to seek help if they're in that situation. So we're going to play that video now.
And Emma, thank you for writing the song. It's great. It's great to have you using your talent to raise awareness about this issue.
Yeah,
thank you.
Absolutely.
Well, you're welcome. I hope it helps.
When you first met, sparks would fly, you're feeling high, you'll stay together on cloud nine. You felt so special. All you do is find a way to be together every day. And when those times came, you told yourself you felt no pain. If you're staying for love, don't do that. Love shouldn't hurt you. If you're staying just because, don't do that. You don't deserve to. It was just the one time. You told yourself while trying to shelve the feeling of losing yourself, it was your fault. You made a sound or shed a tear or showed too much or little fear. So next time you'll know which way is safe to go. If you're staying for love, don't do that. Love shouldn't hurt you. If you're staying just because, don't do that. You don't deserve to. Love is patient and kind. It doesn't remind of mistakes in the past, making the pain last. It's not jealous or proud. It doesn't boast to a crowd. It won't fly into rage when you're not on the same page. It speaks words that are true, wants to protect you, not raise up a hand so you can no longer stand. And it trusts and it hopes to keep dreams alive. It doesn't drag you down so you can barely survive. Now time has gone by. You've learned to smile amongst the crowd, your inner voice screaming so loud. A shadow of who you were is normal now. It's been so long, you're used to feeling in the wrong. But maybe one day you'll get the chance to have your say. If you're staying for love,